Hi, my name's Dave Huxtable, and I'm a linguist, phonetician, polyglot and language coach with a passion for languages. Recently, I spoke to African language activist Sylvain Agbolo from Ghana about a whole range of topics, including the importance of mother languages, multilingual education, the languages of Ghana, including the 15 languages that are supported by the government, language diversity and dialects, how mother languages are used in schools, the goal for mother languages to be used as a medium of education, the sad fact that people can internalise prejudice against their own language, the importance of proverbs and figures of speech in African languages, the value of linguistic virtuosity with competition as to who talks better, and the importance of storytelling. Here goes.
So I am joined today by Sylvain Agbolo. Hi Sylvain, Ndonawo Efwa. And that's it. That's all my airway. I managed to find some YouTube videos.
You tried.
So fabulous to be talking to you on International Mother Language Day. That's a wonderful coincidence that we happen to choose today, as the 21st of February. What does that mean for you? Why is that important?
Okay, so I did a bit of digging on why UNESCO decides to celebrate International Mother Language Day each year. And this year being the theme for this year, which is multilingual education, which emphasizes on the importance of people learning in their mother tongue, which is using their mother tongue as a medium of instruction and learning. So to me, it gives me that pride and that assurance that my mother tongue is actually important. There is no majority. There shouldn't be any marginalization of languages. All languages are important, and we should give the chance to every language to flourish in whatever capacity they can flourish.
So in Ghana, I've been doing some research. There are 80 plus languages.
In Ghana?
Yeah. Is that right?
In Ghana, we have over... Well, when it comes to schools, we have 15 languages, Ghanaian languages that are approved by the Ghana Education Service.
Okay.
So these languages are taught in schools at the primary level, sometimes at the tertiary level. Maybe you can read BA, a Bachelor of Arts in either or any other Ghanaian language. It's not really common. However, it is done in the universities, few universities in Ghana. So we have 15, whichever is part. These are languages, dominant languages spoken throughout Ghana. Yeah. But the beauty of Ghanaian languages, and I think even for African languages in general, is that we have dialect, or let me say subversions of languages. Like ever, for instance, the ever spoken with the Anglos is not the same with those who come from Ho, that is the northern, or maybe Ketakrachi, that the northern part of the Volta region. So we have about 15 regions in Ghana. We have the northern region. We have Upper East, Upper West, the Volta region. That is wherever is actually spoken. However, in the southern part of Volta region, wherever is spoken, the ever is actually a bit different from those in the northern part of Volta region. Those in the central part, those in the east-west, is actually different. You can see some variations in the languages. Yeah. So that is the
different
beauty
that people can't understand each other, or?
They do. We do understand each other.
Okay.
Yes, we do understand each other. The only difference, the distinction comes in the pronunciation and sometimes some words sometimes differ. So, like for example, if you want to tell somebody in the Anglo Ever that you are telling lies, you say ledaje, which is literally what it means is that you have cooked salt in English when you do.
Very figurative.
Very, very figurative to say that you are saying something bitter or it's tasteless. What you're saying is tasteless. Ledaje.
Yeah.
But then when you go to Ho or Pando or those, they'll tell you Lekacho. So you see the variations in there. So when unless you don't know it, you might not really understand. Yeah.
And does that have the same figurative meaning, or is that another? Are they using another
So
image there?
it's totally different. It's
Totally different.
I don't really know the background why they use Lekacho, but they.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there are those 15 languages that are supported by the government.
Yes, exactly.
So does that mean that, I mean, in terms of this theme of International Mother Language Day of multilingual education, does that mean that kids in Ghana can go to school and be educated in their mother language?
Exactly so. But then the only difference is that to use the example of Tanzania, where the medium of instruction at the basic level to the primary level is solely in Swahili. It is not the same here in Ghana. It is something that government is considering, but has not started implementing it yet because of the various languages that we have here in Ghana. However, at the basic and primary level, even up to the junior high level, Ghanaian languages are taught based on your locality where you are studying. So in Accra, for instance, usually schools teach the Ekwapem Chi, the Asante Chi, or the Fante Chi. Okay, it is taught as a compulsory subject, but it is not actually the medium of instruction.
Right. So it's taught as a language.
As a language.
But when you do maths or physics,
it's
that's taught in English.
Okay. Exactly. So for me, I'm an Ewe. I schooled in Accra, the capital of Ghana, and so I studied Ekwapem Chi, which is another variation of the Akan language. So we have the Akan language, which has 3 variations. So like Ekwapem, Fante, and then Asante Chi. So these 3, they are a bit similar, but then because of the different localizations and different ethnic groups, there is a bit of variations among all these languages. So I studied Ekwapem Chi, and I use Ekwapem Chi as a professional because I translate into Ekwapem Chi and also from Ekwapem Chi. However, my mother tongue is Ewe, which is my first language, let me say.
Indeed, yeah. So what would you like to see? Because I noticed, I mean, just a bit of background. I mean, we first met at an African languages conference online, which was fantastic, and you were one of the panelists.
Yeah.
And you describe yourself as an African language activist. So, what would you like to see happen in, let's say, the Ghanaian education system?
Okay. So, what I like to see is simple. That our mother tongues are used as a medium of instruction, starting with the basic schools, and then we climb up to the junior high, and we climb up to secondary and even the university level. Why? Because using indigenous languages, I see it to be an opportunity to include everyone in the society. You know, we have the perception that until you know English or French or Portuguese or these international languages, you are not illiterate.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So that is actually the mindset of people. And now children, like last month, for instance, I was speaking with my auntie's daughter. And I said, I'm speaking with you in Chi. Why are you responding in English? Then she said, oh, Chi is local. When I speak it in school, my colleagues laugh at me. They say I'm speaking vernacular and all of that. But Chi is not a vernacular. It's a language on its own, well developed. So that sense of pride in our local languages is not there. And I think there are various factors to this reason. And I think that there are so many stakeholders we as Africans must come together as custodians of these languages and promote them. Until we do that, nothing can be done, you know. So I think this is what I would like to see, that indigenous languages, or in Ghana, Ghanaian languages are used from the northern part all the way down to the southern part, that children really understand. So anytime I talk about this, the quote from Nelson Mandela really, really resonates with me, that if you talk to a man in his language, you are actually speaking to his heart. He easily understands you, you know. And so last Sunday, just this past Sunday, I was invited to speak on multilingual education. That was a conference that was organized in Nigeria. It was online, so I joined online. And and the woman was narrating a story where she's actually a teacher and she was teaching math. And the child did not understand what the woman was saying, though it was simple 1 + 1, 2 + 2, but the child could not actually understand. Then the teacher said, okay, why don't I bring someone who understands Hausa, because the child actually understands Hausa. And when the teacher brought the Hausa, the person who understands Hausa, another teacher who understands Hausa, and then the teacher went to the student and said, okay, what your teacher is just trying to say is that when you take one orange and you add it to another orange, it makes two. But the teacher actually explained that in Hausa, and immediately the child understood. So this is what we are lacking. I believe that when we shift our medium of education using our mother tongue, because the child goes home, speaks one particular language, and then comes to school, and you forbid him from speaking that language, and then tell him that it causes confusion, because the child mostly understands or speaks, let's say, for instance, Ewe or Hausa or their mother tongue at home and everywhere. They play with it, they engage. So how many children actually speak when they go to the classroom? They only sit down to listen to the teacher until they are asked the question. That is when they answer. However, in the house, they say a lot of things at home. They play at home in their mother tongue and all of that. So if we use what the languages they are so familiar with to teach them, it will be very, very much easier. And a lot of initiatives are coming up. Now I recently saw a lady who was teaching computer science, how to code in Yoruba. So amazing. The truth is that it's not like it's not possible. It's actually possible. We are just failing to take the step to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
I mean, where to go with that? Because there's so many, you raised some important points, I think. One thing with the Nelson Mandela quote, one of the things that made me think was, if and relating that to the story that you told about your niece, where the language that speaks to our heart, if we are brought up to feel that language doesn't have value, then what does that do to our heart?
Exactly. And what makes Ewe or indigenous languages, when it comes to Africa, one thing I've realized is how proverbial all African languages are. We usually talk with proverbs. So when you're talking with an elderly person, 90 or 80% of the conversation you have with the elderly person are just proverbial. It requires great thinking. When it comes to African language, the fascinating thing is that it's so much proverbial that anything you do, there's a proverb for it. that is for sure. So always, you are always on your toe to learn a lesson, a life lesson or something. So it's actually a competition on who speaks better when it comes to proverbs in every language. Yeah. Apart from the normal chit-chatting, yapping with friends and all of that. But when you want to have a serious discourse in any African language, the likelihood that the person will talk in proverbs is very high, especially with the elderly. And, in Africa, we used to do this. And I experienced that some children of today do not really experience that, where every evening your parents would gather we used to live in a household with so many families, and in the evening, an elderly person will come, your grandmother, your grandfather, and tell you stories. Just
Fantastic.
Stories in ever. And then at the end of the day, you ask you, so what did you learn from this story that I've just told? And then they'll say, okay, I learned this, I learned that, I learned that. So that oral tradition has been passed on for years and years and years and years.
And that's the kind of thing that people don't have in a colonial language, because it doesn't have that depth of meaning, that depth of culture for them.
No, we don't. In English, no, we don't. In French, I studied French for a year. We don't have that. The only thing we have are stories, Le Petit Prince, or some stories that you've already read and all of that. Victor Hugo. And these are complicated stories to really understand. And if you don't really learn the French language, you don't get to it. But in the African setting, anyone can tell you a story. So sometimes what we used to do in primary is that we also had our own version in the classroom. So you come and share stories that your parents taught you when you were home. Then you come to the classroom and then you share, okay, these were the life lessons I learned and all of that. And then the best wins an applause or something. So easy, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Because another thing, sorry, carry on.
Yeah. Please come in.
Yeah, so another thing that you mentioned was that kind of people enjoying being creative with the language, enjoying being a virtuoso with the language and being creative. Yeah,
so all African languages are creative. This I can say for sure. They are all creative because we always look for ways to say something. We actually use all the figures of speech, metaphors when speaking. So you actually need to be a bit sound to understand an other guy when he's talking, unless the person is just talking about something banal or just something on the face value. But beyond that, usually it comes with, let me say, creativity. So poems, for instance, which is a constant, which is something that we usually do among ourselves. Poetry in these mother tongue or folklore is something that the Ghanaian government is actually now funding, bringing back these stories and all of that. I'm currently working on a project with UNESCO Ghana where we are translating stories from English into all the African or Ghanaian languages, 15 Ghanaian languages. And I'm the project manager for that project.
Huge thanks to Sylvain for that fascinating insight, and many thanks to you for watching. Part 2 of my conversation with Sylvain will be released soon, so watch this space, or better still, subscribe to the channel and sign up for notifications.